In early March of 2023, I had the privilege to attend a photography workshop in the Faroe Islands, hosted by, who I believe is one of the best photographers on the planet, Mr. Mads Peter Iversen of Denmark. This archipelago, straight out of Norse mythology, is known for its massive cliffs, seascapes, waterfalls, floating lakes, and undeniable beauty. What we experienced this week, however, was much more. With an average temperature of 0 degrees Celsius, 32 degrees Fahrenheit, coupled with frequent snowstorms and extreme winds, the search for epic was difficult and dangerous. These are the chronicles of my adventures in the Faroe Islands. Well, good morning, channel. It's day 5, the last day of the Faroe Islands. Anyway, today we're going to some mountainside where you can view a fjord that is an S-shaped fjord, and it's really cool looking. We're going to check that out and then drive around and do some other things. Not sure exactly what they're called. I'd let you know, but I don't know. So let's see what the day has in store. Thank you for joining me on this last day of the Faroe Islands. Channel, we've made it to the top of this very windy, was a minute ago very snowy peak, and we came from way down there. You see that vein parkway down there? Just zigzagged our way up here, but man, what a view. We're here today to photograph this beautiful zigzag fjord. Our fearless leader Mads down there doing his thing, giving all our photos scale. It's just beautiful up here. Wish you were here. Say we're not working for our shots.
Well, it's like bipolar.
Yeah.
It's manic one minute and then depressed the next.
Yep. So this church was actually originally the church over in Tjørnvik, and then they moved it.
No kidding.
Yeah.
That was quite a feat.
Yep.
Well, back home now, and I want to thank you if you've made it this far through the 5-video series of my trip to the Faroe Islands. What an amazing, unbelievable trip it was. And you know, if you've made it this far, you're one of the rare ones. You watch the video viewership of each of the videos, and the first one gets a lot, the second one gets a little bit less, and it just gets a little bit less. I just guess it's how YouTube goes. Until you get to the end. So if you've made it this far, thank you so much. You know, I've been dreaming about this trip for a decade, since I first saw the Faroe Islands on YouTube and was just amazed by the scenery. I knew I just had to go there. Been planning it for almost a year. Got an email from Mr. Mads Peter Iverson, the guy that hosted the photo workshop. I got an email from him, gosh, about a year ago now, to be honest with you, saying, hey, I think I'm going to go to the Faroe Islands. Are you still interested? And I said, absolutely yes. And started planning it, started working on what I was going to take. I switched camera platforms from a DSL to a mirrorless platform. Spent money on lenses ahead of time, earlier than I normally would, because I knew I wanted to take them to this trip. So a lot of planning went into it, and I hope that I was able to bring some detail and clarity and just bring you the beauty of the place, you know, through the equipment, through the trip, through the experience. And so let's walk through the whole trip just briefly here at the end of the 5th video. Just as a thank you and a reminder, if you haven't seen the other videos and you just happen to fall on this last one, go back and watch the other ones. Every single day there was something amazing. The very first day I arrived, you know, I got there early in the day, you know, flew there sort of overnight. So we had some time that first arrival day. I'm combining that arrival day with day 1 in the videos, calling day 1 the next day, but as you can see this picture here, we stopped on the way from the airport to the hotel to this location. I've seen this location many times on Facebook and YouTube. this road, this beautiful road, is just a leading line into this valley with that majestic island in the background and the beautiful golden brown colors. You know, this shot is great whether it's golden brown or in the middle of the summer and it's all green. This leading line of a road just sort of moves your vision, moves your eye through this picture. It was just a beautiful sight. It was the first place we stopped. It was my first introduction to Faroe Islands photography. You know, and also I was very excited to meet Mass. You know, through his videos, he introduced me to the Faroe Islands, to be honest with you. Excited to meet him. Such a great photographer. He has such an eye and does amazing things with landscape photography. Everything here was unique. I mean, from the landscapes to the cars to the people to the language to the food. And every day, of course, was another epic, unbelievable landscape to visit. So yeah, this was a beautiful little scene, this brown field leading line road. So then we woke up on day one and realized that overnight we got some snow, some pretty good snow. But it was decent weather. It was just covered in snow. And our first, you can see here, our first venture on day one was to go out to the famous Trela and Slave Rock. This is where I was introduced, by the way, to my hidden fear of heights. I mean, I kind of knew I had a little bit, but this solidified it for me. You can see this cliff face here. Just, I can't even tell you how high that is. I mean, I can. It's 400, 500 feet high. And when you're looking straight down to the ocean, it's almost like the island was sheared off and straight into the ocean. Just an amazing sight. You know, your eyes pick up so much. You can see so much in your peripheral that a camera just can't pick up. The activity, the movement, the wind, the sound. It was just an amazing place. And then we moved to this shot. Oh, I've seen this 100 times on YouTube. The amazing, incredible, unbelievable floating lake of Trela. It's a freshwater lake, the largest one in the Faroes, and it sits high above the ocean, just thanks to the geological formation of this. And this vantage point that I'm at right now, first of all, very tall, very high, but the water hitting the cliffs down below from just the blue ocean, and the freshwater lake up above just seems to be so high above it. If you go back and watch the video, and I don't know if he's in this picture or not, but our guide Mass stood on that center column of cliff right there, tiny little person, just to give you some sort of scale about this picture. What an amazing, beautiful sight this was. I could have spent a lot more time here. You know, the hike was a little bit difficult for me. I was surprised by that. I shouldn't have been. I didn't bring any water on this hike, which was a big mistake. My legs were cramping up, but so that sort of was in the back of my mind and just on my mind for the whole time I was out here, and it really kind of makes me mad that I wasn't focusing more on just where I was and the beauty of the place. You know, I would have taken 100 more photos, not that I could have shown them all, but what an amazing location this was. And in this shot, you can see the lake that we just saw is on the right of this shot, out of frame. But it's coming through the right-hand side of the frame and dumping out into this waterfall down in the lower right corner of this shot. And it's where it spills into the ocean. And these cliffs just going back into infinity. It was a majestic, beautiful sight. We were sitting on rocks, just, you know, some of us eating our lunch, some of us just taking it in. And to get down to this area, you know, crawling over slippery snow-covered rocks was not fun, but doable. It just, everything was amazing. To get there, to sit there, to see this was incredible. Okay, and we finished out day one at yet another iconic site This small village here called Gassadalur, and I'm going to butcher these names, I'm going to apologize, but Gassadalur, I'll put the names at the bottom so you can see how they're spelled here, but this little town perched on this island edge with this waterfall, this constant flowing waterfall. It's, again, beautiful in green grass summer weather, amazingly beautiful here with the snow covering. And I gotta say, it was late in the day, we were tired. I remember the straight line winds coming off the ocean were as strong as I've ever felt anywhere. I mean, frequently I would have to hold on. There was a couple of light poles and a fence post along this tiny little road we were on to get out to this spot, this vantage point. I remember many times having to hold on to one of those poles with one hand while I'm shooting with the other, just because I was going to be blown off my feet. It was such strong winds coming in off the ocean to the left of the frame here. Unbelievable winds. And then it would calm down for a few minutes so that we could take pictures like this. That waterfall would be blowing at times so much it wouldn't look like a waterfall. It would just look like spray. You can see it hitting the side of the cliff there. The weather was constantly vying for our attention, taking away a little bit from the scene. We were so focused on not getting blown off our feet or waiting out the next snowstorm. It's good and bad. The snow is beautiful. It adds contrast. It made everything super beautiful. It was hard to walk through. It was slippery, which means there were places we couldn't go. But snow was so much better than rain and mud. Mud you track back into the van. When you get wet from rain, it takes a long time to dry out. Rain would have been much more difficult. So yeah, the snow had its challenges, but I'm super glad that the snow pellets were just bouncing off me and hitting the ground rather than rain soaking me. All right, in this shot, day 2 brought us to this amazing overlook on the island of Vidoy, high above this town. Again, it was a difficult hike. We parked at the closest houses you see in this photo. That's where our van is parked, and we hiked up this hillside covered with snow. You can see some of our footprints there on the left to this vantage point. Again, like the first hike, it was difficult, but it is the first place where we could see multiple islands at one time, and the snow covering just brought them out of the background. They didn't just blend into the ocean. The snow just brings them out. I particularly like in this town, you'll see down here a little church and a courtyard that looks like a graveyard, to be honest with you. That was very interesting. Right there on that front coast as the water was just pounding up on those rocks. It's hard to tell from this photo, but it was. And on this day, snowstorms were short and intense. They moved in and out of the islands, and they provided amazing light show, amazing coverage, and the sun would beam down through the clouds and the snow, just giving us hundreds of opportunities to take different amazing photos of kind of the same scene, but just lit differently. All right, day 3 and the island of Kalsoy. Kalsoy is famous for this lighthouse. I couldn't wait to get this lighthouse, another iconic landmark for the Faroe Islands. The trip out there took us by car, and then ferry boat, then car again, and yes, another difficult hike. It was kind of a long hike, not super steep, but it was a fun hike. You guys saw in the video, I mean, I was wore out. I was last to arrive again, but it was a fun hike. And boy, did it reward us with some of the most amazing landscape of the trip. Again, my fear of heights kicked in, because in this shot, you see the lighthouse, you see the ridge line running to the right of the lighthouse heading off the frame. Well, that's a walkway out to another little mountain. That walkway is, first of all, super skinny. Again, would have been much worse in rain and mud than it was in snow, but snow was slippery, and this thing was high up, and skinny, and it was straight down to the ocean on either side. I was just afraid that I was going to freeze up. I'd get halfway out there and not be able to move. So yeah, I was afraid, and I didn't go to that little mountain. But as you saw in the video, from the lighthouse, there were so many amazing vantage points, amazing things to photograph. You know, in addition to the steepness and the skinniness and the snow of that walkway, there was also the winds, constant, very high winds. Boy, there was one time, the guys that did venture across, were brave enough to venture across, when they were coming back, the winds were so strong, and they had these big camera backpacks on. Man, I thought the wind was going to blow one guy off. I mean, it was so strong, and his backpack was acting like a sail. I'm like, get a grip. He made it across, thankfully, thank God. But I was afraid for him, and I was firmly planted where I was. Anyway, as I said, from the lighthouse, like this picture here, just amazing views. And I had my long lens with me, my 100 to 500 telephoto lens, and I could bring the far off islands in, and it had the effect of compressing the scene, like bringing even though they were far off, bringing them all together, like you can see here in this photo. And look at that landscape, just moody, and the small, I say small, little sea stacks there on the right. They're not small, they are building sized, but the islands are much, much bigger, and it's just unbelievable scene, as you can see here in this picture. And this may be the most dramatic, iconic shot I took of the whole trip. Again, my 100 to 500 lens zoomed all the way into 500, looking from the lighthouse through the snowstorm at this scene. There's those sea stacks again, compressed photo, moody snowstorm. I turned it black and white. It's the perfect example of a black and white photo. I mean, it was a great subject for that. And the waves were hitting, you saw in the video, they were hitting there at the bottom of that first island, and it looked like it was in slow motion. That's because it was so far off and they were so big. I mean, they literally splashed up and took time to come back down because they were so big. But I was watching it from a distance. It gave the effect of slow motion. You can see in the video, go back and look at that. It was incredible. Okay, this photo, looking the other direction from the lighthouse, still at the lighthouse. I cannot begin to tell you how massive this cliff was. You can't see it, but I think there's a person on that cliff edge. There was a little path to walk up that cliff edge about halfway to where that first horizontal dark rock level is. There's a headstone up there, reads James Bond, because if you saw the last Bond movie where he died, it was filmed on this island. That last scene was filmed on this island of Kalsoy. And the headstone had a great saying on it. It said, "The proper function of man is to live, not to exist." What a great saying for where I was and what I was doing. So appropriate. I seriously felt alive. Look at the winds blowing the snow in this picture. I mean, it was sideways. The wind was so intense. And again, in this photo, from the final photo from the lighthouse, this gives you an idea of what that lens could do for me. That very close-up, dramatic photo that I showed you a minute ago is that tiny little piece on the right-hand side of this island. That's the whole island when I scaled back and took it with another lens, a wide-angle lens. Just amazing views. Now in this photo, day 4. The location I was looking forward to going to the most. The one that I saw first when I first saw the Faroe Islands and said, I have got to go there. Dranganir is what they call this. It translates into something dragon, I'm not sure. But it's that giant seascape right there with a hole in the center of it. Usually it's got, you'll see videos of the chaotic ocean just crashing into this thing. Just beautiful. it was, you know, it doesn't look chaotic here because we're so far off. But as you saw in the video, it was going to be a super long hike, and I knew I couldn't make that hike, and I was happy that we opted to go for a boat and get out there on a boat. The boat was going to drop us off right there at on the left-hand side of this photo, those cliffs down there at the very bottom of the tip of the island there, right in front of that sea stack. But when we got there, the waves were just crashing into those rocks. There's no way we could have got that little boat up next to those rocks so that we could climb out. There's no piers or landings there. You're jumping out of a boat onto rocks, and he just couldn't get close enough. So we had to go back, as I said in the video, about halfway to a place that was more protected where we could get off and we could hike. And you guys know the rest of the story there. There was a place that was just too sketchy to get past, and I wasn't willing to risk it. But even where I was, I took this photo. There was some amazing photography had from the safe little perch that I was on. There was beauty all around us this day. If I do a 180 from the previous picture, that's what was behind us. You can see our path in the snow, you know, where we've come from. We came from over that hill. And you know, snowstorms would blow in and then they blow out, and we'd get beautiful shots like this. It was incredible. Let's go to the next photo. Ah, yes. More dramatic. And again, this is with my long lens. Thank God I had the long lens and the tripod so I could hold steady from a distance and still get shots of this place I wanted to visit so bad. It still get shots from a distance like this. The snow would come in from the right-hand side, I think that's north, and come across to the left-hand side of this photo. There would be one snowstorm after another and clear in between. And when they would come in, we would get, we'd get shots like this, just super moody. And the difference in colors here, that's no Photoshop or anything. That is the color that my camera captured. The sun on the left-hand side being swallowed up by a snowstorm that's coming in was incredible. We'd hunker down and just wait for the snowstorm to pass, and then we'd start shooting again. And then, of course, this final shot, one of my favorites from Dragoneer, from far back where I was, that whole cliffside going around, that whole island cliffside going around the left side of this photo. It's hard to describe how steep that is and covered with snow. And we had our crampons, little spikes on the bottom of your boots, you know, and that was giving us some stability. But guys, I'll be honest with you, I was not willing to risk, and some were. I was not willing to risk, you know, going around that just to get down there. And gosh, I wish I could have. I really wish I could have, but just wasn't worth it. And I got shots like this. This is a beautiful shot. This is, you know, taken in person, me right there. You know, I can say I've been there. Okay, and that brings us to day 5, the last day of the trip. And you guys have seen this video. You know where we were on this last day 5. Unbelievable sight. It was not as long a hike, but from the van, it was straight up. And so it was difficult, and it was covered with snow, and sometimes up to your knee or hip in a snowdrift. You'd have to work your way out of it and keep marching up. So we took our time. We weren't in any hurry, thank goodness. And we all got up there. And then you saw in the video just now some of the amazing scenery and crazy snow blowing storms / tornadoes, snow tornadoes up on this site. Simply unbelievable. Something you think you'll never experience. I was so happy to be there and experiencing this firsthand. The wind would blow so hard I would have to get down on my hands and knees because there's no fence post up there to hold on to, and I didn't want to get blown off. Oh, what an amazing place this was. We spent most of the day up there at that location, and then after that we headed towards the final thing for the day and for the trip. We headed towards that little village that is known for the grass roofs. It's so cool, the grass on the roof. It's an insulator. I asked, do they mow that? Do they get up there and mow the roof? No. I was told, I don't know if I believe it, that they let their sheep get up there and eat the grass. I don't know. I kind of believe it, because the sheep can stand on the side of a cliff that I would never stand on. So maybe they do. Anyway, beautiful little quiet location. Had a little lake there. And again, as you saw in the video, super moody. Beautiful snow. Was just a very enjoyable location, this last stop on the trip. All right, guys, that about wraps it up. On this trip, I clicked the shutter more than 1,050 times. And I walked away with about 255 keepers, photos, and probably more. I need to go back through a second wave and see what I want to process and what I want to keep. Off the bat, 255. I captured 118 video sequences with a combined time of 1 hour and 14 minutes for all of them together. You know, I'll continue to post these photos on my social media, my Facebook page, my Instagram page, and you guys know I have a website. I'm going to create a tab on my website with all the best Faroe Island photos there. And I'll probably be creating a 2024 calendar of the Faroe Islands, some of my best, I guess 12 of my best shots for a calendar. I'm looking at creating a coffee table book eventually of not just the Faroes, but decades of photography for me. You know, grab some of my best shots, Antarctica, Colorado, Faroe Islands, nature, wildlife, and put them in a large coffee table book. That's further down the road, but I'm looking at doing that as well. So again, I want to thank you for watching all five of these videos. If you've got this far, you most likely have gone through all 5. Maybe you just landed on this. I encourage you to go back and look at the others. Just amazing places. Revisit all of those YouTube videos as often as you want. But thank you guys for following my art, supporting me and my art, and let's see what's next.